So thank you very much for being here today. First of all, I like my mom has told me about your story, and you're someone I really look up to.
Thank
So
you.
my first question is, why do you think Prince Alamayu's story really resonates with us, like in this generation today?
Well, I think Alemayehu's story is about a prince who lost his parents, who was taken from Ethiopia, who travelled the rest of the world, was taken across the world, ended up in England, met the Queen Victoria, became part of the royal story of Britain, and then was sent to the north of England, and then passed away at just 18 years of age. So what you have is an incredible story that was part of our history, and it is only two grandfathers away. Okay, so you have one grandfather, then you have another grandfather, and then you've got Alamai. So it's not that long ago, So it's within, it's not that long ago that he passed away. It seems like it's a long way away, but it's only 120, 30 years, something like that. You know,
This is more about your work personally,
or
but
maybe it's 200 years. Yes,
yeah,
go ahead.
this is more about you and your work
Yeah.
personally. But what message do you always hope to convey to the younger generation?
The message that I would like to convey to the younger generation is that everything is possible out there. The whole world is waiting for you to make the changes that it needs to be a better place. So what I want of the younger generation is that you get educated. You're educated now. That you apply your intelligence wherever you are and however you apply it, and that you shine. We need you to shine so that there are no shadows in the world.
Thank you very much for your time, for your messages. Thank you.
Bless you.
Before I actually start the interview, I'd just like to say thank you for your time
Oh, that's very kind of
because
you.
I'm actually a big fan of yours. Reading The Prince and the Plunder, I was blown away by the writing. It was
Wow.
like I loved how you just the writing was amazing.
Oh, that's really kind of
And
you.
yeah,
That's so good to hear because you don't often get that. So thank you very much.
but thank you so much for
Yeah.
your time. I'll start with the first question. What pushed you to investigate the story of Tewodros and Alemayehu?
Well, my first contact with it was really the book's called The Prince and the Plunder. Alamai is the prince, but my first contact came with The Plunder. So I used to live in Edinburgh, and I had a friend who was a priest in Scotland, and he found a stolen tablet in his cupboard in his church. And he did some research, and it turned out that a soldier on the Magdala expedition had stolen a tablet from Magdala, had brought it back, and wasn't quite sure what it was, but thought it was vaguely religious. So he gave it to his local church as a present. The church had looked at it and not understood what it was at all, and put it in the back of a cupboard. And then 130 years later, my friend opened that cupboard and found the box in the back, and took it out. And we very quickly realised what it was. He realised that he wanted to give it back because it was stolen. And he organised this. We thought it would just be a small thing. We would just present this tablet to the Ethiopian embassy. But obviously, we didn't understand how important a tablet was, because it turned into the most mind-blowing thing I've ever seen, that a delegation came from Axum to Edinburgh to receive it. It was a big 8-hour party, mass, religious service, celebration, and maybe 200-300 people watched that. And then they took it by train to London. There was a big celebration here in one of the Ethiopian churches. And then they flew it back to Ethiopia, and it looked like half the city took the day off to welcome it back. It was driven from Bole Airport to the centre of Addis. And I was watching this, and my mind was blown. And this was my first contact with Ethiopia and Ethiopian Christianity. So me and my wife, we went to Ethiopia and became journalists for 4 years. And I started doing some research into the story of Magdala. And there are quite a few books about that if you look around. And each of them had like a line at the end, just 2 sentences saying, almost like an afterthought, oh yes, at the end of this all, the British troops also took a little boy back with them to Britain. And very, very sad, he died when he was 18. And that was it, 2 or 3 sentences and all these big books about the battle. And to be honest, I was a bit bored of the battle. I'm not that interested in military history and guns and that kind of thing. But I was obsessed with this little throwaway remark at the end of the book, because I saw there was a forgotten story, and a big part of that story was in my home country in Britain, because he spent 2/3 of his life in Britain. So I thought there's some research to be done there to find out where he went, what he did. And that's really what started it. It started with the plunder and ended with the prince. Yeah.
What was your target audience when you were writing Prince and the Plunder?
Well, I had no idea. I had no idea who would be interested in it. All I knew is that I was interested in it. And I think that there was some interest in the general subject of restitution. So there's a lot of press about the Benin bronzes, things stolen from
Nigeria.
Modern-day Nigeria, then the Kingdom of Benin, the Ashanti gold. Basically, there was a lot of everything in the British Museum.
Yeah. I did a speech about that actually.
Oh, okay.
In my English class.
Yeah, you don't know if you don't know the story. You read the labels, you think, oh, I wonder what this is all doing here.
Yeah.
But so there was a lot of interest in the idea of restitution. So that I think was the basis of the interest in Britain. That it was a story of a forgotten piece of plundering with a personal edge. But what I found really really exciting is that. So that happened. That was quite interesting. But all these unexpected things happening. So the book is slowly getting interest from an event like this, and I'm hoping to have an Ethiopian edition, because really I think that's where the real interest is, and I think it's untapped. I think it'll be interesting to see, and people will be able to say, yeah, it's an okay book. I want to write an even better one from an Ethiopian perspective. That'd be wonderful if this one book encouraged a sort of a flowering of other books. Yeah, so we'll see. Yeah.
As a journalist and reporter, your sort of job is to write a story and allow readers to reach their own conclusions.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering what your opinion is on whether Britain was right to take Alemayehu to Britain, if he was orphaned, had no family, and
I think it's not an easy question of right and wrong. I mean, it was. I think the real sin against Alemayehu, the real thing that Britain did wrong, was that it didn't care enough. So if the British troops at the time said they had no choice, that basically his father was dead, his mother died on the way back, that if they left him there, they feared that he would be killed by Tewodros' enemies. I mean, it's interesting that other relatives of Tewodros, Ras Mashasha, and his other children were not killed, that they continued to have a successful life. But even if you accept that Britain believed that they were rescuing him, I think that therefore had responsibility to look after him in a much more planned way, in a much more serious way. And instead, he was almost picked up by accident, dropped here by accident, and plans were made up as he went along. And various people had ambitions, so for them it was useful to be the guardian of Alemayehu. And then he was moved. He was taken from one guardian, dropped in another school, picked up from one school, dropped in another school, picked up from that school, dropped in military training college, where he was bullied because he was the only black recruit there, and by far the youngest. And so it was. There was no simple plot against him. I think even worse than that, there was neglect and chaos, and he was basically left on his own without his family, without his culture, and with no plan to go back, no sense of a future. So I would imagine at the end he would have been in a state of despair, which would have compounded his bad health. So I know that's a complicated answer, but I think that if Britain felt it had to, it should have done a better job of looking after him, and it should have planned it, and it should have had some kind of realization that he wanted to go home. They should listen to what he wanted when he got older, and that didn't happen. So yeah.
Final question.
Sure.
Where do you think is, if you had to pick one point, the point where international relations between Britain and Ethiopia deteriorated to the point where they were at war with each other? Because they started off with a tentative relationship as Christians and
Yeah. Well, I think it was. So you mean the breakdown that led up to Magdala? I mean, it was a combination of events and then again mismanagement and not caring enough. So there was, I think, a period of strong relations between Emperor Tewodros and Britain's representatives in Ethiopia. I mean, it was only a small group of them, so this wasn't a formal state-to-state relationship, but the potential was there. And this was before Britain, before the scramble for Africa, when all the European powers grabbed all of Africa apart from Ethiopia and
Liberia.
And Liberia. Yeah. So at this point, anything could have happened. And who knows? I mean, I might be overly romantic, but at least I think there was a potential for things to go well. It all ended suddenly disastrously because the two British men who were there, who had, in a sense, bonded with Tewodros, were killed. And then Britain suddenly woke up and realised that it had to replace them, that there was a kind of an agreement. And it sent, if they were the A list, it sent the B list of people to represent them. And who did not have an instinctive bond with Tewodros. He was a totally different kind of man. It became a question of English caution, English red tape, English neglect. And Tewodros wrote this famous letter to a number of European powers offering, an alliance of great Christian powers. And we took the letter and we lost it. We just didn't care. It was not on anyone's radar. So there was no plot. It was a case of neglect and not caring enough. And in that scenario, everything collapsed. It was almost like instantly. That gave the excuse for a whole series of things to collapse and go into chaos. So I think it was a switch between Plowden and Bell and Cameron. Yeah. And also, I mean, Tewodros' own circumstances were changing. That he was losing ground, and he was facing up with his other rivals in Ethiopia. So all these things combined, and then just a collection of events collided in this disaster of all proportions. Yeah.
thank you so much for your time.
That's for, is it for a project or?
We have a YouTube channel
Cool,
called
okay.
Dehna, and I think the channel is mostly to show what living as a diaspora family from Ethiopia to England
Okay.
is, and we go around doing different things.
So I mean, Alemayehu was the first diaspora, right?
He is,
Yeah, and I love the fact that the other boy who was picked up from Magdala.
The servant, I think.
He was just a baby on the battlefield. They picked him up and took him to India. And he was trained up as a doctor. He came back to Addis Ababa when it was at the beginning with Menelik. And then he became an Ethiopian ambassador in Britain. So it's the same, he basically, Alemayehu went to the Red Sea and turned left. This little boy, whose name I've forgotten, turned right to India. And that just gives you an idea of what might have happened.
Could have lived.
Oh, yeah.
Been an
Could have lived,
ambassador.
could have thrived.
Yeah.
And could have been a bridge. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot.